How's everybody doing? Pretty good. Got your coffee in. Fixing bugs today. All good. Happy to learn about file storage and uploading files. Right. Awesome. Cool. So a little bit about myself, and you'll see why I want to talk about active storage here in just a second, and about file storage in general. So I run a small company called Nano Labs. We do consulting, we work with a bunch of different clients, work with a bunch of startups as well, and I've seen people mess up things quite badly, and you'll see that in just a sec. And I wanted to figure out an easy way to actually store files in an easy, scalable way. And this is what this talks about. So I've been doing web for quite a while. When I'm offline, you'll find me snowboarding typically. So if you want, come to Whistler, join me. And yeah, I'm a full stack dev, Rails and React, lots of React lately. So tonight, I just wanted to talk a little bit about those stories that I told you about, why I want to talk about active storage, where things went wrong with previous solutions that I've been a part of, and the recommendations that I've given that weren't always right. I want to talk about what modern file storage looks like. I want to talk a little bit about active storage itself, and does it fit this description of modern file storage. Really, initially when I started this talk, I wrote it as active storage, modern file storage. And now I ask myself, active storage, modern file storage, question mark? So I'll try to answer that tonight. We'll take a look at the different life cycles in uploading the file, transforming the file, downloading it, and preventing your website from crashing, hopefully. And we'll take a look at a few alternatives to active storage. And then we'll conclude and see if it is actually modern or not. So there's nothing more exciting than an Unsplash slide with two buffaloes fighting. So I wanted to start right there with some battle stories. Story number one, bail on Rails. So here I worked at a little startup. I joined them in 2012. They were uploading a whole bunch of files into Rails backend. It was a file for school. School teachers would upload a whole bunch of 200 images at a time, and things weren't going that well. The sales team was hiding away from the customers. They were scared because they didn't want to see them yell. And we got a lot of flack for all that awesome stuff. So I was asked, can we help improve this file uploader? My immediate response after watching a few Node videos and doing a tiny little side project was, yes, we can. Let's do it in Node. 3 months later, I wanted to quit programming, and but we got it done. We got uploading with automatic retry. We got 200 files uploading in a zip. We actually started using the direct uploads to S3, but it was just really painful, and we did a lot of work for it. Then I started my own startup because I thought that, hey, it was too stressful at one startup, so I'll de-stress, and in 2013, I'll just start my own. So we're trying to help event organizers find event venues. And in there, I just needed a really simple file uploader to show you the pictures of a space. So I went ahead and I pulled out Rails again. I took CarrierWave and I implemented the whole thing in like 3 days. So that was great. Life was good. And I love Rails. Unfortunately, startup failed, so it wasn't that great. But hey, you live and you learn. The third story I wanted to share with you is really what got me thinking about this topic of modern file storage. So the first part of it is in summer of 2018, I kind of played around with active storage after it was released in Rails. I think it was Rails 5.2. It was just brand new released after watching it on at RailsConf that year. And in the fall, we had this really fun, it had nothing to do with active storage, by the way, but we had this really fun DDoS attack on one of our servers. They targeted a bunch of our PDF, slow PDF endpoints. And yeah, it was a really fun learning experience. And I do mean that it was actually fun for me. It wasn't as fun for a DevOps engineer who was in charge of keeping this all alive. I had a blast because my job was just to support him. But I had a good conversation with him, and he said that the second slowest thing on our infrastructure was our file upload. We just did normal file upload in process. It was really slow, and he talked about modern file storage, and he kind of outlined what it meant with the new S3 advancement, resizing, and things like that. So it got me thinking, what is modern file storage? So the way I see it, modern file storage is modular. So you can replace pieces as you need. You can scale it up and down as you need. It supports multiple cloud providers, so you don't have to be stuck to Jeff Bezos' hip. You can actually use Google Cloud, or you can use something else. You want it to be fast. You want it to be scalable. You want it to be cheap. And you want it to be easy to set up because we're in Rails. We're lazy. We like things to just be done for us. So that's what I want in life. And I want to have my beer. And the last thing that's really important to me was to be API-based. And the reason for the API-based is we have a lot of devices nowadays. I want to upload from an iOS device. I want to upload from an Android device. I don't have a form necessarily in there. So what is active storage? Active storage was extracted from Basecamp. It's kind of DHH's baby, like a lot of other things. It supports a whole bunch of cool features, a lot of different cloud providers out of the box. It supports this idea of variants, which is different versions of files in different sizes. It supports mirroring. It supports previewers, which is kind of similar to variants. And has accessible metadata, kind of. You'll see what I mean. And you can upload documents, you can upload images, and you can upload videos. Try jamming a video down a Heroku app. Good luck. So the first thing we have to take a look at to kind of understand file storage in general is to take a look at the file lifecycle, and we'll kind of tie it back to active storage and how things work in active storage, but it really doesn't have anything to do with active storage. It's just how we store and upload files in general. So we need to first be able to select a file. Exciting, right? We need to be able to upload a file. I feel like this is rocket science. We have to analyze that file to know what's the width, height, if it's a video, the length. We want to take a look and maybe scan for viruses. We want to transform that file, so we want to get smaller sizes, or we want to get a preview thumbnail of it. And then we want to show it to our users. We want to download it. And each one of these steps has a different performance characteristic and different considerations, and that's what I meant by modular. So there's nothing like looking at the source, as you'll find with active storage. The documentation is not the greatest. So that's one negative side. But you can just bundle open that sucker, and in an afternoon, you'll be an expert. Trust me. So how does active storage map to these file lifecycle thingies that I came up with? So if you open up active storage, you'll see that for selecting files, pretty much there's Rails forms, and there's really nothing else that it provides you. what I like doing in my apps is BYOU, bring your own UI. So React and none of the Rails stuff, because forms are kind of lame. The second part is the upload, and you can see it in the controllers. So if you open up Active Storage, you take a look at controllers, you'll see what's going on, and I encourage you to do that. You'll see in just a second why. Then our analysis job is, as you'd expect it, under jobs. And we have some transformations and the transformers, and you can take a look at how that's written. And we have two models, one variant and one previewer, and you can use them. So let's take a look at file selection. And for those of you who, cool. So those are actually files for those of you who haven't done woodshop class or whatever it's called. Yeah, haven't seen those in a long time. So the traditional way of selecting a file is super easy with Rails. You just need a Rails form, and you just jam it in there with a file field, and life is good. You can also do a direct upload to S3, so that's how you upload your videos and all the stuff that you would want without crashing your servers. Please use that even if you're using this old method. So no longer running requests, just use direct upload. So Rails forms are kind of that, and I don't like that. I mean, I like dinosaurs, but not that much. Really, what I want to do is bring my own UI. I want to use something like Uppy for my apps. Uppy is a really amazing library that lets you, it looks exactly like as you see on the screen. It lets you upload a bunch of thumbnails. It has a lot of cool features to retry things and show you stuff. And turns out you can actually use it with Rails after a little bit of hacking. And I'll show you this in just a second. So we want to be able to, so now that we have our files selected, we want to be able to actually send them somewhere. Those big shipping containers, we want to send them to our server. So we have a few considerations as we do that. We need to think of the number of files that we have. We want to know if, can you resume and stop and resume and upload, like for a video, for example, that might be important, just so you know. The connection might matter as well. You want to take a look at the type of files. You might want to be transcoding them. You might want to be doing some interesting stuff with your files. And again, you don't want Rails anywhere near your file uploads, please. I don't want to go into your app after your boss calls me. Please don't do that. So file upload, usually in the traditional sense, it uses a multi-part file uploader. If you haven't seen what that looks like, it just like a normal form request, but it also has chunks with the boundary in them. It looks something like this, those chunks. And it separates the binary chunks, so you can send it in little parts. You don't have to send it all at once. So it's pretty old, like the dinosaurs. Again, it doesn't, I mean, you can implement it, I guess, on iOS, but do you really want to? I don't think so. But we can also, we can use it with XHR as well. So XHR is Ajax. But there's a better way. So if you take a look at the YouTube API, it turns out they figure out how to do this. They actually do file uploads. So instead of doing one giant request with all your metadata in there, we can do two different requests. The first request, we're going to upload our metadata. And from there, so the metadata will be the file, the size, and the type. And from there, we're going to get back a location. And we're going to use that location for direct uploads. It can be whatever service you want. It doesn't have to be S3. It can be an Alexa endpoint for all of you hipsters out there. But it works really well, and turns out that active storage does that if you tell it to direct uploads to S3. So you can take advantage of that and actually have an API that works. Yay, active storage. So it looks something like that if you take a look at it. So you can post it to the Rails active storage endpoints there, and it will give with this blob. So this blob is the metadata that you need. So I'm uploading this file here, and it gives you back this response with a direct upload URL. You can take it and you can upload it with your custom uploader with something like API. And yeah, so that works really well. So in the schema, you might want to know that, so this is how Active Record actually stores things inside when you do Rails init. There's stuff like the byte size, all your metadata and the blobs itself. And then there's another table called attachments that, that has a relationship between your models and the attachments, the blob attachments. So to do a custom API, it turns out it's pretty simple. When I first looked at it, I wasn't exactly sure how to do it until I remembered I can do inheritance. And again, I looked at the source. So if you don't have a RESTful endpoint, you can just look at the source. It's like literally 3 lines of code, if I remember correctly. And you can put it in your GraphQL resolver. Yay, GraphQL. Yeah. So the third part is being able to analyze your files. So that's also something you kind of don't want Rails to do. A lot of things you don't want Rails to do when it comes to file upload. But so the things you care about when you do analysis is kind of the width, the height of the image. You want to know a few things about it. You want to extract some metadata. You maybe want to put it in a full text search as an example. So you can do all these things. Usually it's pretty simple. What Rails does is just calls this, if you're using image magic, it's going to be identify. If you're using something else, it's going to be whatever else it's called. And yeah, it just sends you the data and saves it to that active storage table. It gets a little bit more complicated if you're doing it on S3. I mean, you can download it and you can do it in process, but there's sophisticated things that you can do with Lambda functions if you want and send the data back. I haven't seen any documentation or any help on doing the more complicated way. So active storage doesn't do that exactly for you. It will actually download the file in a background job typically, and then it will just run identify on that process. Not too bad, but can be better. So yeah, you might want to scan for virus, like I said, in there. And that's what active storage uses. Cool. One of the last things you want to take a look at is transformations. And here you can do really cool things with S3 and with a bunch of libraries out there. And it's pretty interesting what active storage does as well. So for transformation, we want to resize the files. We want to maybe add a watermark. We want to take a video out of a video frame and display it as a preview. We can either do it as a lazy evaluation when the user is actually requesting that file, or we can pre-process it. With lazy evaluation, again, with those long-running requests through Rails, you probably don't want to resize your file that's like 20 meg high-res file in a Rails request when the user asks for something. So that's not going to work for you. So active storage uses background jobs for that. It really doesn't give you a lot with the lazy evaluation. It actually will do it in process for you. It's not great. And once you're all done, it looks something like that in your S3 bucket. Again, this is probably the most annoying thing about active storage at the moment. You can't customize this. You cannot store it somewhere else on your bucket. You can't rename it. And that really hurts us when we want to have this used by some other app. Maybe you want your Python data scientist people to use that stuff. Or maybe you want it for your machine learning algorithms and all that stuff. Right now, these file names that are CPN000OP, what the hell is that? Is there a JPEG? What is that? Why am I looking at it? And how does it relate to those variants as well? Yeah. Which brings me to kind of the final step in the file lifecycle, which is downloading and previewing your files. And that kind of ties it all together. It's really easy to do it with active storage, probably one of the easiest things to do. If you're using a Rails view, you can just use an image tag and plop your attached model in there and you're done. If you need the service URL, you can get it by using the service URL. By default, Rails is going to mask out the service URL, which means you're going through Rails to download your files. Again, you don't want to be doing stuff with Rails when you're just serving a file. Why do you need to involve Rails in there? But it's not the end of the world. It's just going to do a join. But still, you might want to consider this. The next thing you would probably want to do is you don't want to give your user a 20 meg file down. You probably want to show them something else. And this is kind of where Active Record really shines in my mind, is they have this thing called variants, and we have something called previews, and we can actually take a look at if something is variable, if something's previewable. So variable or variants are things that are images, so we can modify them, resize them. And previewable items would be something like a PDF, so non-images, but we can display them as an image. So that works really well, and you can just use that previewable and variable in your views or in your API responses. So again, variants only apply to images, super easy, and this is really beautiful. You can do this resize 400 by 400. This hash up there is just passed to ImageMagick, so you can actually do whatever you want in there, and it will generate and cache that version of the file for you, that variant of the file, which makes it really beautiful if you want to redesign your UI or you want to have different croppings based on what image you're viewing. And I really love that because I used it for our app, and you'll see it in just a second here. It's really easy, again, to get a link to it as well. Oops, sorry for that. Keep thinking there's two buttons. Cool. Yes, it's really easy to get a link tag and link to the original image. Instead of the 400 by 400, you can get the original size image there. So we use that to our advantage for our app. I wanted to have like really beautiful images with proper cropping. I didn't want just to crop from the top or from the bottom. I wanted each one of them to have a unique cropping. So in one evening, maybe 2 evenings, I just kind of coded that. And it was really simple. All it is a bunch of themes in here, and our back end looks like that. It just has an X and Y crop. I didn't even have any like dynamic cropper in JavaScript. I'll just set it manually like that. So lean, and that's what it would look like. So that was pretty awesome, and I can resize things, and I don't have to worry about running a rake task or anything like that to resize all my files every time. It was just on the fly. It just happened once. And then it was cached from that point on, so I didn't need to worry about it. It's not going to work very well for you if your users are uploading a whole bunch of files and then you're trying to do on the fly resizing of thousands of images. So probably you want to pre-process them, or you want to use a Lambda function or something else. So don't do that. Yeah, so that's exactly the issue here. So in process has really bad performance. It only works with small files. As soon as you have larger files, you'll start hitting timeouts. If you're increasing your timeouts, you're doing this wrong. I really learned this during our DDoS time from our DevOps engineer, who told me never to increase timeouts, and I totally understand why. So have aggressive timeouts, offload that to different servers. The other thing you can do is just have it in the background, so that's not bad. It can take however long it needs. You probably want to cap it still, but that's pretty cool. So Rails does that as well. You just need to configure it to do that. Previewing a file is just as easy as doing the variants, and that was really cool to upload a video and see Rails extract the first frame of that video and just show it to me. You can even write your own custom previewers, which is useful for displaying stuff like Word documents. Right now we have stuff for PDFs, but we don't have stuff for Word, for example. And a little bit behind the scenes there. Hopefully you can actually see it. So this is what it looks like when you try to fetch a Rails file. Shows you the representation. Again, like I said, it doesn't give you the S3 link unless you ask for it. It's great for things like mirroring, which Rails allows you to do. And the goal of Rails 6 is to be scalable by default. So that's pretty great. It's good for dynamic sizing. So you don't get the old size. You're interpreting the new size every time. And it's great for lazy evaluation. What it's not so great for is, again, that performance. You're still sending requests through Rails. You're incurring that cost. If you just ask for the S3 direct URL, you won't have to worry about that. So as I was kind of researching this, a few really interesting things came up as I was researching the dynamic resize on S3. So what you can do with S3 is you can have a Lambda function that listens on a bucket event that as soon as you create an image in your bucket, you can predefine all the sizes for you and resize them. That's awesome. And none of that stuff is supported by active storage, which really sucks. There's none of that. And as you look further into this, there's a library called Tumblr. I think that's how you say it, at least. And it does things like this. Where it allows you to write in your URL. It allows you to do things like watermarks, specify the sizes, which is really cool. It's kind of like GraphQL for your images in a sense, because you get the image that you really want and not the shitty images that your backend developers told you should have. Which brings me to one of the best alternatives that I've seen, which is Shrine. So Shrine is this great little library. If you haven't seen that, been around for longer than active storage has been around. It's really configurable. You can do a lot of things. It has, some people wrote plugins for it to do that dynamic resizing on Lambda. It does things like resumable uploads, which Rails or active storage does not support right now. It supports API out of the box. You can rename the files that you have, which is awesome. And yeah, there's a little bit more work setting it up, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. So the complete opposite alternative is do not use Rails. Firebase storage is this amazing thing. It's the easiest thing, and really that's what I think we should aspire for. And in the Rails community, when we talk about file storage, it should be just as easy as it is for Firebase. You just create a new project, you configure JavaScript, and you're done, and you can just upload files. It just really gets out of your way. And it scales like I won't say a bad word, but it scales really well. I'll just say that. So yeah, so there's other services that are storage as a service, like Transloaded, which actually wrote API. There is FileStack, and there is Cloudery. I haven't used any of them, but I just thought maybe some of you have and have some interesting insights. And the conclusion. So active storage shows a lot of potential. It's actually really simple, and it's really easy to read the source in there. It works really great for admin interfaces and simple things like what I showed you we did for PictureDat. But beyond that, it has a lot of shortcomings, and it really locks you in to things. So I'd recommend you start with Shrine. You can continue CarrierWave. If you're on Paperclip, it's dead, so you should switch. I'm sorry. And don't over-optimize things. I know I talked about a lot of really cool things that you can do with S3. I'm an engineer, I'm a geek, I like doing these things. If I can give you more performance, I will, but you don't have to kill yourself for it. But keep your options open. As long as you can do it at some time in the future, that's great. And these are the million references that I ended up reading, and I just wanted to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. And out of there, I'll just say that Go Rails, if you haven't seen it, amazing thing that Chris runs. He really picked up the torch from Ryan Bates on the video tutorials. And there's a bunch of links there to the S3 stuff and really interesting reading on the two-step API uploads that YouTube is doing. And that's about it. So if you want to come and talk to me about more of this, if you want to talk about any engineering subject whatsoever, come find me. I'll give a quick shout out to our friends at Spacelist. They're hiring a full-time engineer like everybody else. The only difference there is it can be remote, small team, ownership, and they actually pay really well. So yeah, so maybe it will suit somebody. And if anybody has any questions, I would love to hear them now.
This may not be the most important question, but in the beginning of your talk, you said that loading assets was the second slowest thing. So I'm just curious to know what was the slowest thing.
Yeah, the slowest thing is we had these PDF conversions. It was a resume building platform, so we would create resumes and we'll ship them to you as PDFs when you need to. So WK HTML to PDF is a library that does that, converts HTML to PDF. And it was really slow. It was unbound by anything. So if it takes 5 minutes to run, it took 5 minutes to run. And as long as you find the right files to upload, that's what happened. So we kind of bounded that and we cleaned up a few of our display endpoints. And that's what prevented us from crashing.
Hi, great talk, by the way. Just want to ask, just because we've experienced this, have you ever come across an image that was renamed with the file extension? So it was actually a GIF, but they renamed it to a JPEG. So does active storage have an offshoot solution for that?
When you say they, was it a malicious attack? Was it the
yes.
client? The client was reporting that it was a GIF and it was a JPEG or something like that. Right?
The other way around. So they're saying that it's a JPEG, but it's actually a GIF. So trying to see if it will work on their image. Basically.
Yeah, so the analysis step is really where you'd want to reject those. You can never trust what the client gives you. So you still need to do analysis on, what are you guys using, by the way, for your file upload?
I think it's just CarrierWave with, I don't remember. It's been a while since I've worked on those, but
yeah, that's what I'll just look at how it does the analysis on CarrierWave and see that it actually compares it between the metadata that it has stored, like I showed in active storage, stores it in the blobs, and the data that's coming back from the identify function.
thank you.
Anybody else got? Oh yes, one more question in the back.
Well, it's not a question. You just ask about Cloudinary and other tools like that. We use Cloudinary at some point, and it's good because they take care of they basically give you an API so you can send your files, and then on the fly they can generate any conversion or any previews or resize and crop and so on. So they do all that for you. So it's good because from my experience using ImageMagick or the tools like that, pretty often they break for some reason, or they won't maybe work with the last version of JPEG or something like that. So Cloudinary is nice for that. There is another tool that we use at Kickstarter that's called ImageX, and ImageX will pull the images from your own S3 bucket. So you can still use active storage to send the images to S3, but then they will pull those images from S3 and they will apply any transformation you want on the fly to those. And maybe compared to one of the AWS tools you mentioned that would use serverless, that's like a library that uses like serverless AWS Lambda, I guess, to transform things. You can pass some sort of, I think there is a key or something like that. So just to make sure that that basically you can't you have to provide a key whenever you want to transform an image, and that's a way to ensure that people won't play around with the tool and won't generate like hundreds of different versions of their own image. But I believe that the tool must allow that. Just if you click one more, just that the URL that you displayed didn't have any like hash key in there, so it seems that anyone can play.
Yeah, it actually does have that feature in there.
Okay,
I just put it there for simplicity. It has an HMAC that you need to send before. You can also do like unsafe requests, which is what you're talking about. So what Philippe is saying is that you don't want people to DDoS you with trying out all bunch of different transformations, like upscaling a file to something stupidly large, or downsampling it to something stupidly small, like 1 by 1 pixel. Yeah, go ahead.
So when you use the active storage syntax to say preview, what does active storage actually do? Does it go grab it from S3, pull it down, transform it, and then display it on the file and keep it as cache locally?
Yeah, it does cache it. It's depending how you have it set up. So it will do it in process, which means it will do it as part of that request by default, but it can also do it as a background job. So I don't know exactly what happens when, for example, you request a file that you've never seen before of a certain size, and you don't have that yet. It must do it then in process. It has no choice, right? You cannot pre-process that. You don't know when the background job is going to be done. So you can either be waiting for that, or you can just do it in process. And I think it just does it in process, which doesn't scale.
Any other questions for Michael? All right, I think that's everything. Thanks,
Thank
Michael.
you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Very good.